Welcome to Product Time event 278 or something like that. I appreciate you guys coming. First off, a few housekeeping items. Restroom, down the hall to the right. Food, Summit Pizza. Obviously, you guys have all acquainted yourself with that. Sorry if the waters are a little warm. This morning, it was cold outside, so I put it in my car thinking it would be okay, but didn't work out. Anyway, for our next event, we don't have anything slotted for July, so we rely completely on recommendations. If there's anyone you guys think would be a good speaker, please let me know. Please come up to me or reach out to me via LinkedIn or Slack, or just come up to me here. We're always looking for good speakers. And before I pass it off to Tucker here, just wanted to give a big thanks to a few different companies. One, let's give a round of applause to Adobe for hosting this. Commissioner Daniel over here, he's got setting up. The food is provided by another company, Limble. So let's give them a round of applause. And then I'm gonna give a little nice intro for Tucker here. Tucker, I actually used to work here at Adobe. He is head of product over at Intermountain, and yeah, I can tell he's very interested in product. He's had a great story about how he's transformed the work culture, the product culture over at Intermountain, at a big healthcare facility like that. So I don't want to give away too much, but let's give a warm welcome to Tucker, and let's kick it off.
Thank you. Can everyone hear us on the line? Oh, is this on still? Oh, yeah, we're really closing out each mic. Can you hear us okay on the line? Are we good there? Yes. Okay, great. My clicker's not working. Hang on. Okay, I think we're all set now. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. I'm really excited to talk about the product culture that we have now at Intermountain Health and our journey to transform to this. For me, product is not only a job, but it's really kind of a hobby and a passion of mine. So I'm going to jump right in. Before getting into it, I'm just going to give a little bit of context before getting to the journey and talk a bit about the company, the problem, the product, and our prior product culture. So we'll go through this, then we'll look at the journeys, the lessons learned during that journey, and get to the results at the end. So starting off with the company is Intermountain Health. Our mission is to help people live the healthiest lives possible. We're the largest not-for-profit healthcare organization in the Intermountain West region. Here's just a little bit of Intermountain by the numbers. We are in 6 states now. About 2 years ago, Intermountain Healthcare and SCL Health merged together. So that increased our coverage out to Colorado, Montana, Wyoming. So yeah, fairly large organization. My story really is about a smaller 100-person-ish group within this organization and doing product management. But let's talk about the problem. So rewind back to 2018. So in 2018, there was a number of industry-wide surveys in healthcare about digital tools. And what we found is the vast majority of our patients, our consumers, were expected to use healthcare or digital tools. The vast majority were dissatisfied with what they were getting. And as many as 50% of them would switch to something, a better digital experience. They were getting good digital experiences in all their other things, financial services, media, retail, etc. They weren't getting it in healthcare though. So you see all these happy, smiling people here? This was not healthcare. It was 2018. Absolutely not. Right. So this is the whole industry, not just Intermountain Health. So where was Intermountain Health? We had an app called Health Hub. It was a whopping 1.4 star experience. Lower numbers are bad, right? Like we were in the thick of things here. This was a major issue. It actually became one of the top 3 initiatives of our company to figure out and solve this problem. So if we look under the hood a bit on this problem, really what it was is we had disjointed user experiences. So all these cool technologies were popping up. You go one place and you pay your bill. You go another place and you look at your medical record. All these various things, but they were different logins, different places. It wasn't connected in the way that consumers would think about it. It wasn't a holistic journey. Health Hub was really just a band-aid. It was an app we put out there that was just linked to all these other places, but it didn't integrate them together. So our solution, our product, is the Intermountain Health Patient Portal for Utah and Idaho, formerly known as My Health Plus, and a little bit shorter name back when we first launched it. We rebranded last summer, we brought the new colors. This is what it looks like now. And if you interact with healthcare, there's probably a good chance that you perhaps use this portal in here. At least that's what the numbers are telling me. I've seen some nods in the audience. But yeah, this is our product. This is a fully integrated one-stop shop patient portal. So what that means is instead of going to the health hub, you go to this portal with one login, and you get all the experience right there. And all the complexity of all these different vendors and technologies, we integrated all that on the back end so we could give a seamless experience for our patients. We put up a bunch of services. We connected these through what I like to call a lot of engineering and design magic, but various APIs, SDKs. In some cases, we even use web views, lots of database stuff, things along those lines. With this platform, we were able to scale out the number of use cases we could cover and things along those lines. There's a lot of technology at play here, but this is how we solve for this problem. So this is what it looks like today. Not in 2018 when we first had the problem. Let's go back to 2020 real quick. So in June 2020, we had our broad release of this portal. This is what it looked like. Well, it's a little bit different than it does now. Like literally, like everything on that dashboard, that main page is different now. But we had a successful launch, and why was it successful? Well, first off, we had happy stakeholders. Our leadership liked it. Our CEO was a self-proclaimed power user. He was also a cancer patient, so he really was using our app quite frequently. Within a couple months, we were up to 25,000 users per week. That's pretty rapid adoption compared to the old solution, and we hadn't turned off the old solution, so people could choose. They could get their medical record in either place, and we were seeing very rapid adoption. Our App Store ratings, the low point of this app ever was a 3.1. That was actually around about 2 months. It's slowly gone up from there. Not the best, but demonstrated better than where we were at the start. And given the complexities of the technology, it was a good starting point. But we could be better. We needed to be better. And that's really what drove us to continue to iterate on this thing. We were already planning on iterating on this thing, but it also drove not just improving the product, but how we improve our culture. So I want to walk through a little bit of that. So our prior product culture, the approach we took here, well, first off, the initial launch of this, we brought in consultants to help us. They helped out at a variety of levels, but they were doing a lot of the product leadership work. And near the end of this, in February 2020, I was recruited away from Adobe. Sorry, Adobe people. But yeah, I was recruited away to come in to kind of take on some product leadership and take this thing longer term. But they set up a model for us initially, and we got a lot of good stuff done with it. These consultants, they came in, they did good consulting work. They did a lot of great discovery. They talked to our customers. They talked with our stakeholders. They tested prototypes, a lot of really good stuff there. They built excellent relationships with various stakeholders across the development. Intermountain's a large organization. At this time, we were over 40,000 people. That's a lot of stakeholder management. And so a huge prop to them and the work that they were able to do. When I looked at the build teams, the people who are actually writing code and focus on the build side is different than the people doing the discovery. There's a disconnect there. So I kind of look at this as kind of a feature factory sort of thing. We had engineers in here that, in their own words, as they reflect back at this time, were coding machines. And our product managers, their HR title was product management, but really their day-to-day was focused solely on, or primarily on the delivery side. They were really just product owners. The consultants would come with these solutions to these ideas, and they would build them. So not necessarily the best way to do it. We were, getting stuff out there though, and shipping. And we looked at success and measuring success of this build team was really based on outputs. We couldn't hold the team accountable for outcomes because it wasn't their solutions that they were building. So these are some things I wanted to improve upon. Also, our design team, they were not integrated in. They were a separate kind of internal agency model sort of approach. So the various groups would come to them when they needed help on something. Someone would kind of get assigned, come and help out, and then they jump back into the pool, waiting for the next project. A lot of challenges and problems with that sort of approach. A common one, for example, is we get some solutioning with the leadership on something, but it gets enough level of detail. And so the build team starts building something and there's gaps. Like, what about this error screen? What are we supposed to do there? And now there's a mad rush to work with design to try to figure it out, but we got to ship this thing in a couple of days without enough time. And so an engineer just slaps on an error message, and of course it's not user friendly, and you get the problems. Like things like that were happening, and all that sort of stuff. I will say that our delivery capabilities, I was really impressed there. We got a CDCI pipeline going. This was Intermountain's first app in the cloud. A lot of great QA process and DevOps process and things like that got put in place. Analytics implemented before we went live, which I'm getting clapped. The Adobe, when I was at Adobe Consulting, so many customers are like, yeah, well, we'll do that, the next 2 months after going live. Like, no, we weren't doing that. Like, we were launching with analytics. So a lot of great stuff coming out of this on the delivery side. Net overall, though, I call this a command and control feature factory model. I definitely had some concerns kind of taking this model going forward as I was coming into that product leadership role. In addition to what I've already covered here, just a couple of concerns. I could see decision bottlenecks. I was going to be taking on what 2 consultants were doing, and just way too many decisions made at the product leadership level that could be better made within the build teams or within the product teams. Customer expectations. This is June 2020. COVID is well underway, right? And everyone's freaking out, panicking, and we're trying to figure out how do we do healthcare when it's mostly virtual and things along those lines. So the need for innovation was going through the roof. A lot of the easy stuff had already been done with our initial launch. And so, there still was some low-hanging fruit, but not as much. And so we were going to really need to ramp up the innovation. And to do that, we really needed to tap into the potential and the brain power of the entire team. There's no way we're going to be able to scale that innovation at the pace we needed to if it was just coming from product leadership. Also, I saw a risk to morale and burnout, untapped potential, things along those lines. This is very common, I think, with the command and control feature factory model. You talk to anyone who's worked in both of those types of organizations within these product teams, and they'll tell you that it's a lot more fun, it's a lot more engaging to be in an empowered organization. So that's the context, the background. Let's go into the journey now, some of the lessons learned, tips. I'm going to bounce back and forth a bit between 30 of these lessons learned, and we'll hit the results near the end here. I'm going to start with what I'm calling tip number 0. Any marketing fans in the room? Okay, lots of hands. Awesome. All right, yeah. So retransformed. I call this tip number 0 because it didn't exist back in 2020. I wish this book had existed. It is fantastic. There are so many things in there that really resonated with me, having gone through the experience, thinking back like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wish I had known that back in 2020 or 2021. So that's tip number 0, retransform. All right, get into the journey here. So June 2020, we probably released 25,000 weekly users. That's kind of our baseline. This transformation has three pieces of it. This first period I call the ad hoc empowerment period, where here I am, new director, product management, trying to figure out what I'm doing, testing out different things, building trust with people, and making progress and incremental progress and things along those lines. But definitely ad hoc was a part of this. Then something happened that got us into this focused transformation period where the rubber really hit the road and we were able to get going with things. And then we got to the end of that, and I really defined the end. You're never really done, hence why there's a continuous optimization. But I kind of defined the end of this focused transformation when we got to a place where we had teams that were empowered, that we could give them problems to solve, and they had the discovery and the delivery capabilities to solve those problems, and they were accountable for driving the outcomes and not just the outcomes. That's kind of what I'm going for a definition of kind of done on something that your culture's never done. But those are kind of the three periods. So I got stories throughout these and some tips. Hopefully you enjoy them. The first one is in December 2020, my boss retires. So I find myself here in a top 3 initiative, reporting directly to the chief consumer officer of the organization, 2 levels from the CEO. And they let me keep doing this thing. In hindsight, it was kind of surprising, like another VP didn't swoop in, or something like that. But I actually found myself taking on a lot of the VP responsibilities. As I look back at that, I thought, okay, what happened here? But like my boss could have come in and started running a lot of the stuff as well. He came from Disney. He knew how to do great consumer experiences. That didn't happen either though. And I think the reason why is trust. And up until this period, even though I was relatively new to the organization, the work that my team was doing, I was doing, and things along those lines really led to a lot of trust. Like the organization was betting on us. And that takes me to the first tip, which is start with trust. So if you're looking at transforming the culture in the organization, it will live or die based on the trust you're doing, that you've got. Whoops, I clicked too many times there. Don't look at that quote. Sorry about that. So yeah, start with trust, give it, build it, watch it. This is absolutely critical. You just don't get anywhere with influencing people, let alone changing the culture, if you don't build a high degree of trust. There's a lot. I want to pull in a couple of quotes here. The first one's from Christiansen. He's part of Silicon Valley Product Group and has been doing this product therapy podcast recently. And just a couple of weeks ago, he did one called Coaching Trust. He did this with Leah Hickman, who's ex-Adobe. And he said, I often get the question, why don't more companies truly empower their teams? It can be summarized in one word, trust, or really the lack of trust. So this podcast is amazing. It's just a masterpiece. It's only about 30 minutes long. I highly recommend checking it out. They go into so much good content in there. But that's kind of a little bit there from Christian. The next one I've got here is from David Marquette. He's got a book about empowering teams called Leadership is Language. In there, he says, trust people first because your trust in them will affect their behavior. In the context of this, he's really talking about managers trusting employees, which is backwards with how a lot of companies do it, right? A new hire comes into the company, it's like, you got to prove yourself, right? Trust is low with that person. If you can flip the script on that, though, bring someone into your organization and say, look, I hired you because I trust you. Let's go do great things. And do a lot to help them build trust within the organization. It makes such a big difference in being able to drive things with that individual, help get them up to speed faster, get that transparency you need, get that safe environment, all those sort of things. Christian talks a little bit about this in his podcast as well. But yeah, trusting really key. I've noticed that as well as I've brought people into my organization. So I got a few people in the room that used to be on my team when I was a consulting manager. I'm sorry. I've learned a lot since then. But, yeah, the power of it. They're kind of like, do you power people? Yes, I do power people nowadays. Yeah, I've learned a lot. But Marty Kagan, in his Transformative FAQ, says in practice is all about progressively earning the trust of the executives. So the buzzword here is progressively, right? And I found that as you build trust, and this isn't like a on-off Boolean, yes, no sort of thing, but it's an incremental thing. As you build more trust, you can do more of that trust to drive more good. You can do more of that trust to empower more and things along those lines. And it's not just the executives, all the stakeholders that you're working with. But yeah, this whole thing, transformations live or die on trust. So my advice is when you go back to your day-to-day, from time to time, take some time and assess where is your trust at with the various people you're working with, your team, your stakeholders, everyone else. And you'll see there's strong correlations there in your ability to influence and drive things for the good based on where the trust is at. And where you've got those gaps, I encourage you to work on those. So how do we build trust? This is a recipe I prescribe to. I certainly didn't come up with it, but just kind of things I've learned along the way. But I think it starts with understanding, right? The person or the people or the group you're working with, what matters to them, what's their goals, their aspirations, their fears, their concerns. But build that understanding, build empathy with them, right? Like we talk as product managers is about what is we're building features for users and products for them. And we need to understand them and have that empathy. Similar idea here with the trust, with the people that you're working with. As you understand them better, you can tailor your communication in a way that you're meeting their needs and you're helping further that trust. I like to think of proactive communication with this. It's really about getting ahead and anticipating those needs and being there ahead of their panicking or worrying about a deadline or something like that. With this, competency is really key thing. People aren't going to empower you and trust you to go out and do product management work if you don't know how to do product management work. Right? You've got to build those skills. And delivering results, doing this all with integrity, like these are three key elements. If you're looking for, if this is an area that's been difficult for you and stuff, I'd recommend checking out Stephen M.R. Covey's books. He's got some good stuff there. Trust Inspires, one that I've recently listened to. They go into a lot of depth about trust and how that fits into leadership and how to build it and things along those lines. Okay, back to our journey. So this ad hoc empowerment, I got another story in this period about something we tried out. It's called the DVF calculator. And I'm still on the fence if I actually like the DVF calculator or not. I think it worked in some places or not, but I got a fun story. So bear with me here. This is the DVF calculator. Its intent and purpose was to help us early on in the discovery process, kind of look at things like the customer desirability or the value for the customer, the business viability or the value for the business, right? And then our technical and operational feasibility. So we had standardized a set of questions that we could ask. We did put scores behind them. Honestly, the scores weren't all that helpful. The questions were far more helpful with this. But this was something we rolled out, and it was intended to help us drive collaboration with our business stakeholders as we're thinking about potential future solutions and solving problems and things along those lines. And when I shared this with the product manager, I said, go start trying this out with your stakeholders. One of my product managers was super excited to use this new tool, emailed it to a business stakeholder and said, hey, start filling this out ahead of our meeting next week. And when I heard about that, I realized I'd made a huge mistake. Because this document had questions that we knew the answers on, questions that business stakeholders knew the answers on, but it wasn't like a intended document for that sort of thing. Like, I don't know, have you ever worked with a team where you send an email to someone and say, hey, I want to start talking about this. They're like, stop, before we talk, fill out this 30-question form, submit your ticket, and then we can talk. Right? Are those fun teams to work with? No, kind of hard to work with, right? So we kind of just did this a little bit to one of the stakeholders. And that was not my intent with this tool, right? My intent was to facilitate collaboration. But I did learn something from this. And what I learned was that the principles matter more than the framework of the tools. So this wasn't my product manager's fault. As a leader in bringing this new tool, I failed to explain to the team and share with them the underlying principles or the intent of the tool and how the tool should be used. And it kind of hurt us there. It was a useful tool in a lot of other places, so it wasn't a terrible thing. But I learned from this, and I think something that I've taken away from this, and if you're looking at a transformation, there's going to be a lot of looking at the processes and the tools and the frameworks where you're using and things along those lines. And as you do that, look for what's the underlying why, right? What is the underlying principles? What is the purpose and intent of this tool? And that will help you see what tools are working for you in empowering your teams and what teams and tools are working against driving that culture shift. It will also help you see when to use the tools, because sometimes they can help and sometimes they can hurt, but you don't want to necessarily get rid of them because you want to use them where they can help you out. Very much a two-edged sword sort of thing when it comes to these frameworks and tools and processes and stuff. And I think when you do a process, sometimes process gets put in place with good intention, but then that meaning gets lost and it ends up kind of hurting you, and that's where you get a lot of red tape and things along those lines. Okay, back to our journey here. So we were moving into the focused transformation. At this point, we had kind of a pivotal moment here. I'm sure everyone's really curious. It was just a book club. So we did a book club on Marty Keegan's book, Inspired. Begin Transform hadn't come out yet. It was just me and the product managers. In hindsight, that was another mistake. I thought this was a book for product managers. I read the first version back in 2018. In hindsight, I would have invited the designers and engineers to this as well, and leadership. Anyone I could get, because I think there's a lot of power in doing a book club. Later on, we also, on a one-pager, documented our team principles. I'll show those in a moment. Mistake I made there is, you can see this is quite far up the timeline. I should have done that like 10 months earlier, like shortly after the book club. Should have started getting those ideas out of brain and onto paper. But both of these helped us move forward the cultures. And the reason why, I think, is that a strong culture is dependent on a common language. So this is the next tip here. So I found book clubs help build common language. So buzzwords, acronyms, they really get a bad rap, right? Everyone's like, I can use them. They stifle communication. But we still tend to use them in our vocabulary. Why do we do that? I think a lot of that is that it's just kind of like the human brain is kind of tries to find shortcuts all the time, and acronyms are shortcuts, buzzwords are shortcuts. Like for example, is this still on? Oh, I should have close enough. Sorry. So for example, if I said red work versus blue work, if you read the book Leadership is Language, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read that, probably no idea, right? So when you do a book or when you read a book on your own, you can learn a lot of concepts, a bit of information overload. But when you do it as a team, there's a magnifying effect to that because you start building this common language. You start using the same buzzwords and they mean something to you. Of course, you're not going to be able to get everyone to read the books. And even if you do, there's a lot in these books. You need to distill down to, okay, what's the so what for us? How are we going to focus what we've learned from this and apply to our team? And I think that's where documenting and discussing the principles helps kind of take us to the next step. And so that's what we did. I'm not saying this is necessarily the exact perfect way of doing it, but this is what we did. So we called it the core elements of the Power Product Team. And what we did is we started off with the middle of this. What do we want to really be, right? We want to be teams that were building solutions that delighted our consumers and also worked for the business. So to do that, the principles were things like addressing the risks up front, intense cross-functional collaboration, and by the way, not intensity and frequency, not in like getting really angry at each other, but a lot of cross-functional collaboration amongst the team, things along those lines. The ideas of continuous discovery, continuous delivery, or product over project. So leaders, we'd bring objectives to the teams. They would have the space to do discovery, come up with the solutions and deliver those solutions and iterate on those solutions. By doing that, we could focus on outcomes rather than just outputs. We could bring in ownership and accountability. These solutions were the team solutions, not my solution as a product leader, but the teams, they belong to them. Missionary, not mercenary. We wanted everyone in here committed to the cause, still want work-life balance, but committed to the cause. And also continuous improvement. So an environment where we're always learning and growing and trying out things, failing and learning from those failures, succeeding, learning from those successes, all that sort of stuff. So teams, they showed up with this idea of continuous deliveries through self-managed teams aligned to the overall strategy. So I wasn't in there micromanaging all the scrum ceremonies or things like they knew how to do this stuff. And so I gave them the space. Instead, leadership, we showed up through vision, strategy, context, mentorship, and trust. Those were kind of our core principles. Back to the journey. So during the book club, we weren't even done. About a month in, I'm meeting with the product managers. And there's something that's blatantly obvious. We are totally working the wrong way with the designers. So we go to the design team and say, hey, this internal agency model, like we're reading this book. Marty Kagan says this is terrible. Kind of talking through it and things along those lines. There's definitely some interest as well as some concerns. Things like, well, what if one of the teams has too much design work and another team not enough? Like, how do we balance the workload? What if the designers start kind of innovating off in different directions and we end up with inconsistent experiences across the app? Things along those lines. We worked through that. We came up with plans. One of them was the designer would meet on a weekly basis and share with each other what they were working with and collaborate with each other, things like that. But we got that going, though. We brought them into the teams. We also took the usability testing from the design manager. He was doing it all. And we brought it to the product manager and the designer within the teams, which raises all sorts of other concerns, like what about bias and things along those lines. We worked through those concerns as well. And what we found is we were able to get these designers much more embedded, much more involved in solutioning early on and throughout the whole process, all the way to seeing how things actually did. And it was amazing. It was awesome. I've got a quote later on from my design lead talking about that. We also, during this time, had a lot more focus on the core skills. And everyone on the team, they had strengths and weaknesses and so on. And as a team, we had strengths and weaknesses. This really helped us see kind of where we had gaps and what to work on and things along those lines. And we were able to do that. Here's just a quick list of some of the things. Some of these things we were doing before, we increased self-service usage on, like the usability testing example I just gave. Others were brand new techniques. We weren't doing A/B testing until 2022, I want to say, was when we started doing A/B testing. I hate to admit that. So I got stories behind all these and not enough time, but and I'm probably forgetting a few things as well in here. Certainly not everything we're doing, but this is kind of an example of areas where we focused in on. This takes me to the next tip here, which is data fosters ownership and self-service empowers. So I saw something really special as my product managers got into the data and they learned how to use the web analytics tool. and things along those lines. The product, it became more real to them. It became more tangible. It became theirs. Like ownership, I felt like there was more control. Like, okay, I can see the data. I can come in here. I can change it. And I can look at it. It's not some pre-canned report someone else has given me or something my boss is sharing with me. Like it really helped build that ownership. And that self-service really helped the team in terms of speed. Like if you take a product manager who has to go to the analytics team to get all the reports, even basic stuff. You have to go to the consumer experience team to get interviews done with customers, right? You take another product manager that can self-service those things. That second product manager will run circles around the first product manager in terms of speed, the value they provide to the team, to the organization, like way better. So my advice here is, as if you're a product manager, if you're a product leader, look at where you're at with these things. What are the data sets? How close are you to being able to self-service these things? And what can you do to improve in that area? Because this will make you far more valuable to the organization that you're working in. All right, moving on here. Let's see, April 2022, Intermountain Healthcare and SEL Health merged together. By May, my boss, the chief consumer officer, is gone. He chose to leave. And by June, I have a new VP coming over from the digital services team, who was the digital services team, coming over from the SEL Health side of the house. So this could have killed the whole thing. Again, it didn't. As I look back at that, why didn't it kill it? Trust. There was a lot of really rapid trust building there, a lot of change going on. I remember those discussions and stuff. I do have an amazing boss now as well, so definitely credit to her. But I remember sitting down and kind of talking and saying, one of the first things here to realize is that we do things differently. I walked through those principles. Thank goodness they were documented just in time there for that conversation. But we walked through the principles, how we did things, and showed the results that we were getting. Like the value in these results, we were getting these along the way. Like I was getting value from empowering people all the way back in July when we first started making changes. And we were just getting more and more value as we were going. But I was able to show the successes that we were getting because of that. And it built up, like those results there and getting to know her better and things like that, built up enough trust that not only did it give me the space to keep doing the stuff I was doing, but it also generated interest. She wanted to understand more of this whole product management and healthcare thing. It is not common to have product management in healthcare. And it's actually evolved to this point where I've had opportunities to kind of work with her about ways that we can bring product management to some of her other teams in the organization. So our journey goes on here. The next milestone, OKR process is established. So exact objectives and key results. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. And this was a tool that helped us kind of bring accountability into the equation. But before diving into the OKRs, the next tip here is empowerment brings accountability. It's really got to go in that order. Like you bring in empowerment, and then accountability is kind of a natural thing that comes out of empowerment. At least for most people, it is. Try to flip that around the other way. You try to hold somebody accountable first without them being empowered. It's unnatural. It doesn't work very well. Let's say you've got a solution, right? If you've built that solution and you've invested the time in the discovery for it, things along those lines, it's yours. It's easy to be accountable for that thing, if it's successful or not successful. If you're building somebody else's solution, it's it's not yours. It's a lot harder for you to take on, I'm going to be accountable for something. Like you feel like a lot less in control. But when you empower, the control is there and accountability is a lot more natural. So we use the OKRs to help bring in this accountability to the empowerment equation that we had been working on. And the way we did this is we said, okay, here's the objectives and results idea. We also put it in context of the roadmap. Because roadmap in the past was how we decided a lot of what we were going to build. We wanted to downplay the importance of the roadmap and bring in this idea of objectives and key results. So our objectives, this was really the problem to solve, the strategic context behind that problem, why it was important to solve it, the area of focus. So very tightly aligned with our strategy. Our strategy literally is, team, these are the couple of objectives we're going to have you working on. This came from leadership. So a big part of my responsibility, the discovery work I was doing myself, wasn't to come up with solutions, but to make sure that all the teams are focusing in the right areas and on the right objectives. The key result, this is really how success is measured, by how much. These are the outcomes we're trying to drive. These came from the team. So a lot of companies roll out OKRs in different ways. In some cases, the leaders might come to the team and say, here's the objective and key result. Or the leaders might have at their level a set of OKRs, and then the teams have at their level a different set of OKRs, and they're supposed to connect and feed in. Hopefully they do. Sometimes there's gaps. Both those models have flaws in them. I'll pick on the first one a little bit, but if I come to the team, let's say I've got the objective of I want you to improve online scheduling, and here's the context why it's important to do that, and so on. And then I give the key result by 10% quarter over quarter. The team goes in, they work on it, they improve it by 5%. What do we do now? I'm kind of pointing fingers like, why didn't you guys achieve the key result? And they're like, you gave us a goal that's unreasonable. This wasn't possible. Right? It's finger pointing. We're not learning anything along those lines. But if we follow this sort of approach, I go to the team, give them the context, the objective. They come back to me. They say, we think we can improve it by 10%. What's going to happen is first, they probably know a better goal than I do because they are closer to the technology and the capabilities, and they're doing deeper research in this specific area than I am as a leader. Second, this is their goal. It's their thing. It's not the thing it's not somebody else's thing that's imposed upon them, but it's their thing. So their commitment level is higher. So they're much more likely to be able to achieve these goals. And then also, if we miss it, let's say we get 5%, right? There's no finger pointing. I don't need to point the finger. The accountability is clear. And that, when you have clear accountability like that, then that's really what opens the door for learning. Instead of trying to pass the blame, we can look at it and say, okay, we thought we could do this. We didn't. Let's figure out why. Let's figure out how we can improve and do better next time. So that's kind of the power of this kind of alignment here of objectives into the key results from the leaders into the team. It's a way that you can give empowerment while keeping things still aligned in the right areas, right? You notice the objectives don't come from the team either. Like empowerment isn't every team just goes and builds whatever they think is best in whatever area. Like everything that's being built and what you're doing needs to be driving towards the right overall strategy. But this approach, it kind of helps connect it together in a very, very effective way. So what does this mean for the roadmap, right? Every product manager's favorite or least favorite thing, right? The dreaded roadmap. Well, it's really all it is now is the current plan. It's heavily subject to change, right? It's just the outputs. We're not focused on outcomes. We're focused on driving the key results. If we find a new insight today, we can pivot tomorrow. Literally had this happen last week. The team came to me and said, hey, this thing we're planning on doing, we're doing some technical feasibility. It looks like it's going to be a lot more complicated than we thought. We're going to pivot and go this way instead. It's like, great. That's their roadmap. They're still working towards getting me the key results. And they found a way. And I told my boss on Monday, like, hey, this thing's happening. And she's like, great. My boss, just a few weeks ago, we were talking about roadmaps, and I didn't pull up the whole roadmap of what we were working on. I just said, these are the objectives. And I gave a couple of examples, and it was like, awesome. And just yesterday, I provided an update and showed, and sure enough, the metrics, they're going like this. They're going this way. They're going up. This model, it works. So the roadmap, again, comes from the team. This was a shift that we had. I wasn't leading through, here's the roadmap and the commitments, and things along those lines. But, and this is tricky. This is hard, right? Lots of teams are going to want commitments on things and stuff like that. The more you can get people focused on driving outcomes and commitments around the outcomes, then the more likely you're going to be doing what the business really wants you to do, which is driving those outcomes. All right, so there's our journey. Who wants to see the results from it? Yeah, get some hands. Okay. What does this do? Real life. Okay. So first I want to look at the results, kind of this 25K versus where we are in 2024. And then I also want to look at the snapshot of 2023 against 2022, in particular areas where we had OKRs at. And then I want to look at culture. So here we go. Weekly users, 25,000 to 110,000 per week. Our monthly patient engagement rate, 24% to 78%. So that's the number of people using the portal divided by the number of people having medical encounters. Keep in mind, this is an optional product. You don't have to use this if you need to go to the ER or want to schedule an appointment with the doctor. It's there for convenience only. So numbers this high is telling me that people like using it and it's valuable for them. App Store ratings are now in the 4.5 range, very respectable. I think especially compared to where we were before and the technical complexities that we're dealing with. We have plenty of excuses there, but I won't go into those. Dozens of months of development time saved. We can iterate so much faster, trying out prototypes and testing theories before engineers actually build things. It's just saved us a huge amount of time with this model. A lot more. So looking at the OKRs, we were working on things like overall use, online scheduling, bill payments, messaging, e-visits. These are key focus areas for us in 2023. Now, e-visits look really big. That was a new product we launched out late 2021, so there's a lot of room for just natural growth there. But these other features, they existed before this portal. Like they all existed back in the old Health Hub solution as well. So we've been iterating on these for quite some time. Pretty significant numbers, right? Pretty good. No, not bad. Thank you. Just to add to a little bit more of this, if you look at the context of the year of 2022 versus 2023, in 2022, COVID was still in the full swing. Lots of people were getting tested, and they were all getting the results out of the portal. So that was driving a lot of traffic to the portal. And then when people were in there, they would check out other features and learn, oh, I can schedule online and other things like that. By 2023, that really died down. We've only got a couple hundred people a day now that go in and look at the results out of that 110,000 a week. So that driver really dropped down, but we still saw incredible growth. And I really attribute that growth to the innovation and tapping into just the brilliance of the team. And by creating this culture where we're engaging the whole team, rather than just a handful of product leaders to figure out what we're doing or just the stakeholders, we're able to really do some amazing things with this. From a culture impact perspective, higher job satisfaction, lower attrition, increased ownership and accountability, greater scalability, decision making, increased innovation, the ability to iterate until outcomes are achieved or pivot as priorities change. Looking at my team, like they love what they were doing. A lot of just fantastic stuff. This is the type of culture I wanted for the team, and this is the type of thing that kind of really inspired me to move in this sort of direction. So I want to share a couple quotes from some of the folks on the team who went through this journey with me, or at least most of this journey. But the first one is coming from my lead architect. She was a senior manager initially in that feature factory and moved into lead architect later on. But she said, I've witnessed the profound impact of embracing the empowered product team paradigm. Here, engineers aren't just tasked with solving problems, they're also empowered architects of innovation. So just curious, like product managers out there, who wants your entire engineering team to be empowered architects of innovation? Does that sound pretty nice? Yeah. I feel it's more about simply complete tasks, not the ownership, right? Over the process and the outcome. It's really cool too with this architect here is this was her first like engineering leadership opportunity, and she got a chance to learn how to do things like delegating stuff in an environment where she was empowering the team. And she's just an amazing individual, really like top leader within our organization. But she's really been able to scale her influence by uplifting her entire team. So that's my lead architect. Moving on to my lead designer. True innovation and sustainable outcomes arise from embedding designers within cross-functional teams where they can focus on collaborative efforts and innovative solutions that deliver long-term value. So that whole experiment about let's bring the designers into the teams, it worked. She likes it. The team likes it. I mean, we saw that even with the designers, there's increased satisfaction and along those lines, I think, by going with this model. And it was tough. There was a lot of learning new skills and stuff that went along with that. There's a lot of designers that go throughout their career without ever doing usability testing. Like they build the stuff and they give it to somebody else to actually test it, or they might observe the testing, but the researcher is doing the actual testing. The next one is from my group product manager. He was a big fan of this, by the way. So he was actually a key partner to helping me go through this and kind of a change champion with this, because he had worked on empowered product teams before he had joined Intermountain. And what he says here is the empowered product teams have completed completely changed our focus to tracking outcomes and progress towards desired results. The whole team is engaged in the work of solving problems rather than simply delivering product features. So for me personally, having someone who had worked in other teams like this in the past, this is a lot of great validation. I would have lost this guy easily a couple of years ago if we weren't sincerely making progress towards empowerment. And huge props to him. He did a lot to help me do this. The last one here is coming from my boss, the VP of Digital Services. She said, the product management approach is rare among health systems. It allows our caregivers to take full ownership of the outcomes, focus on improvements and innovation continuously. The result is happier, empowered caregivers and solutions that exceed expectations among our patients, consumers, and caregivers. How's that for validation? Like, I don't know, when my boss sent me this, I'm like, hey, could you give me a quote? She sent this over to me. I was like, wow, like I feel kind of good about the work I'm doing now and stuff. But yeah, so there's kind of wrapping it up with some of the people and things along those lines. We saw the results here. I've got one more tip here. This is definitely on the psychological side. I think I've dabbled in that a bit here. But this stuff can be scary. Don't surrender to the environment. Influence where you can. Focus on the positive, on the fear. As I look back at this journey, there were many, many times where I thought, I wonder if I'm going to get fired now because this crazy, outrageous thing that I told that stakeholder, yeah, the product manager owns this thing. Work with them on this thing, right? Things like that. But it didn't happen. I did apply tact as I was going through this. I wasn't recklessly out there and definitely had to control my emotions at times and trying to help kind of guide through this and stuff, and certainly made a lot of mistakes along the way. But I think it's all about continuing down that journey. It can be scary. You got the storm clouds. Don't go charging off into the storm clouds, but find where you can influence the good. Be transparent with your leaders and build that trust, all that sort of stuff. I got two more people I want to quote. I've been quoting a lot of people today, but almost done. Nick's coming up here, so they got to shut me down. But almost done here. But so Shreyas Doshi, he's a thought leader in product management. He's got a YouTube video, how to be a real leader. In there, he talks to product leaders. He says, ask yourself what's stopping you from enabling this culture change. Like if you're listening to this podcast, you kind of know what you should be doing. So what's stopping you? So there's probably fear. That's okay, but you need to figure out how to talk about fear. To the individual contributors, product managers, right? He's like, you can complain all you want. That's not going to help. You need to find an executive, work through that executive, someone that gets it. Right? If there's nobody that gets it, then start with your team, work there. Start changing how you do the day-to-day work there and grow the influence through that. Last one here, Teresa French. Here's the Silver Catalyst. Another book I recommend. It's not a lot in this session. I like to read. But she's got a lot of really good tips. Now, honestly, it's a bit intimidating. You go through that book, it's a very humbling experience. And a lot of people come to her and say, this is great stuff, but my company just isn't set up to do it this way. This is way too hard for us to do. We're not empowered like that. And to them, she says, she talked about her first 3 jobs in her 20s and how in all those cultures, she was not empowered to do this sort of stuff. And what she says is in every single one of these jobs, I found a way to get close to the customer, a way to advocate for human-centered design, a way to build product that worked for our customers, and it wasn't hard. Here's how I did it. I had a strong sense of agency. And then she says, I knew that I couldn't impact how I did my own work. I didn't worry about how other people were doing, what other people were doing. I didn't try to change the way these companies work. I simply did my work my way, and I got results. I think this is probably a secret to her success, what she's been able to do. She kind of talks about how later on, I want to say in her 30s, she was the CEO of somebody else's business. That's the sense of agency. That's leadership there. Being willing to own that fear, take some risks. Don't be reckless, but take some risks and influence where you can. So to recap, we'll open it up for questions now. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. Just shoot a quick note in there why you're connecting with me. I would love to have conversations after this. Again, this product stuff is a hobby for me. Sorry, consulting folks, I love consulting too, but I really, really love the product. I'd be happy to chat and go in more details about things. I also am just curious what other people are doing, and I love learning. So, yeah, Nick, you want the questions there?
Yeah. The question. Oh, there we go. feel like this question is inevitable, and I just wonder, I'm curious, how much is you or your team use AI in your development process? I'll just say I've used it to write code, and it's remarkable. But I just want to know what your team is.
Yeah, well, we are in a highly regulated industry, being in healthcare. So like we're not allowed to just go use ChatGPT. But we do have some capabilities through Microsoft Copilot because we can kind of properly detect patient data through that. And we've been on the engineering side, we've been looking at we've actually got people piloting GitHub Copilot right now. And so I'd say early stages in terms of figuring that sort of stuff out. I certainly dabbled in it a bit in writing SBARs. That was the joke when like this first thing was coming out before we had access. Like, this is great. This can write all our SBARs. It's literally like one of the first things, business things I did with it was write an SBAR. But yeah, it can help you kind of articulate things and stuff like that. So I think it's gonna be the future. A lot of things. I'm a big fan of generative AI. It's definitely got limitations, but it does still feel like I think there's stuff to still learn there for my team.
So, one of the obstacles that comes to mind when you're talking about introducing a lot of things that represent dramatic change in organizations, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the friction that is sure to come? Sometimes it only takes one key player to shut you down for everything.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with that?
Yeah. We didn't get shut down. I definitely had many times where people were looking at me kind of like, that's different. Especially like this whole transformation story wasn't like a we're in a desperate situation, the business is gonna die if we don't do product totally different. Like we were coming out of success. Like we had already delivered something that the business was happy about. But I think a lot of it first is trust. I did have a tip actually in here about employee change management principles. I pulled it out because this presentation was already too long. But change management is a huge part of this. If you look at like product principles, if you have a Venn diagram, change management kind of starts to overlap in that as well. Because yeah, I mean, and there is risk. So it's having tact, and I'm always looking as well, like planting seeds. So I'll like try something out with someone, kind of see how they react to it. If I say like, oh, this is likely, like this is gonna go the wrong way, I'll pivot my conversation and things along those lines. Or I'll look at ways I might be able to plant the idea and come back to it later. And being reasonable, right? I think being reasonable isn't necessarily conforming. Like it's not like, okay, I'm conforming and just you know, I'm a cog in the machine, not making a change, or I'm just radical crazy person over here. Like being reasonable somewhere in between. You and then again, that's kind of influence where you can. And it just takes a lot of sense in there. It's kind of like when you're building product, like you got to get to know your customers and stuff like that. Like product sense isn't just this magical thing. You do your homework, it's easier. Similar thing here. If you're understanding your stakeholders, that's a key part, I think, in the communication. Did I answer the question? Like I just yeah, the machine got to answer there. There's a whole lot of different things.
Let me ask about along your journey, do you ever have times where you kind of get too much empowerment, development enough direction, and teams sort of following you where you go? So heard some organizations out there talk about that.
Yeah.
Get empowered, you know, give enough direction.
Yeah, definitely. There were times where my product manager would come to me like, I need a little bit more context around that. And that was an indicator that maybe I pushed it out a little bit too far, or I hadn't positioned it with them. A big thing for me was learning what empowerment really meant. And it's not full-blown autonomy that the team can just do whatever they want to, right? And so that the whole OKR thing and the whole idea of what does it really mean to bring objectives to a team? As to me, that was a key thing. And I learned that my responsibility as a product manager wasn't just the mentorship side of things and helping people be better product managers, but it was also the strategy. And I would collaborate with my product managers because I wanted their thoughts and input on the strategy. But ultimate accountability of that, the overall vision of that fell with me. I remember there was a time when a product manager was kind of like, it was shortly after our release, I want to say, it was like there was all this work and build up to get the thing launched, and we got it out there. And then we're kind of like, well, what's the vision now? What do we do next? And that was the big question. And there was a lot of also like we were absorbing it and seeing how people were reacting to it. So it's not like we had a solid, like, oh, we should exactly do this sort of thing. But yeah, you definitely will fall into that sort of thing. And it's all about creating that safe, transparent environment where your product managers and you can kind of work together on things and uh, and kind of help each other out a little bit with it. I think mentorship and coaching is not a one-way street. Is that a cliche thing to say? I don't know. I learned so much from my team, and it's just creating that environment. I think is really really key to it. So you can learn from those things.
So kind of along those lines, and number three, strong culture depend on common language. That slide that had the quotes, I was pretty how you like this to refer to the movement of our product culture. Have this established within the company that this is what we're doing. We're doing our product culture.
Yeah, early on, that was to varying degrees. Also, secret on the OKR thing. I started doing that with my team before I took it to leadership, so we could figure out how to do it. I didn't want to go start holding us all accountable for things when we're still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I think there was some of that. It depended on who I was talking to and things along those lines. Internally within my team, there was a lot of like, I want us to be empowered. This is what it means. Things along those lines. With stakeholders and stuff, I was a little bit more cautious and a little bit more tactful. And some stakeholders, they don't care how the sausage is made, right? In fact, they don't want to know how it's made, right? That was more kind of carefully guided towards conversations towards, well, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve, right? And putting the focus more there, less on the roadmap. We still talk about the roadmap, but we caveat it as subject to change and all that sort of stuff. But we really tried to shift towards that business outcomes. And trust is key to this. A lot of building trust. Like when a stakeholder trusts you, when you say we need to pivot, that conversation is way easier. If they don't trust you, it's questioning, it's escalating to the boss, it's all that sort of stuff, right? So I can't underscore enough the importance of trust as the underlying just foundation and pin of all this sort of stuff. Oh, the quotes. So the first one was from Christian Adiotti's podcast. The quotes from my own team. Oh, yeah. I just said, hey, I'm doing this really cool presentation. Here's the context of it. Can you share with me like your own success story of it, right, or something like that? Yeah, they knew what I was talking about. Yeah, it's planted a little bit, so, but it's also sincere. Like they really mean what they're saying. They know these words are going to be up there for everyone to see and stuff like that.
So speaking of like that, knowing those words, I know you guys have a lot of books out there, and you started with Inspired. Were you ready to start with Empowered or Inspired? If you were to do this all over again, what books would you start them on the track?
I think that would depend on the context of where the organization was at. And I think Marty Kagan's actually recently talked about this. He said, start with transform. And if I was working with executives, like if I'm going to do transformation from the top, absolutely. It makes sense. Like it amazes me how spot on that book is with a lot of the things and how easy it is to understand. Remember, when I first did Inspired, I thought this is a book, it's really written to product managers. And I didn't want to be like burdening my engineers by having them go read this book. Later on, we did do another book club more broadly. And before that, I went to one of my architects and he had never read a business book. And I kept on telling him, like, we got to change it. We got to do this way. I finally convinced him to read this book. And he was like, that book is so good. And by then, like this was much later, but I was like, wow, okay. Like, yeah, this book works. So if the need, like, if it's like, okay, when you transform the whole thing, I think transform is a great place to start. And then probably Inspired and then
team.
If it's, yeah, if the culture gets it and you're working with a product manager, right? And you're trying to help them get up to speed on the details of product management, I'm gonna go straight to Inspired first because I can help them with the tools that they need. If it's a product leader, I'd probably start with Transformed and then Inspired and then Empowered. But the reason why is if you're a product leader, you really need to know the stuff in Inspired, and Empowered builds on that, tells you how to do your job as a product leader. But yeah, so yeah, just depends on who you're working with.
Let's take one more question.
what you have accomplished in healthcare is phenomenal.
Thank
But
you.
also work in healthcare, especially the large health system. It is very, very difficult to make any changes. And I'm very interested to find out how do you overcome the initial resistance from the college, because I'm pretty sure it's there, because they have this way of doing things for many, many years. And all of a sudden, we have this product practice that comes from seem like nowhere, which they probably have never heard about.
Yeah.
We're trying to share a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of the engineers on my team have previously been in kind of project-based sort of things and seen a feature factory. They could see how much better that was in project-based, right? I've got longevity when I'm working it. Just a big step up. Going to Empower is the next step up from that. So there was definitely one of that. But I think it's one of I had great counterparts on the engineering side, even though this was new to them. And hashing through things, talking through things. And with the stakeholders, the stakeholders came down to trust and deliver results, right? Like we had a successful product that was helpful. There can be catalysts and drivers for change. In this case, they trusted me and they saw we were incrementally getting better and they allowed me to keep kind of moving forward with my thing. I do think Intermountain Health, if you go to the highest level, we call it the executive leadership team, the ELT, they do a really good job of empowering the organization. You kind of have to when it's that big. They can't make all the decisions. As you get down to the individual teams, it varies on how those VPs and directors and so on. And so with this, the boss that hired me away from Adobe, she was looking to disrupt, kind of bring the outside in. And so there was a lot of trust that I built with her, and she gave me the space, and we talked about this empowerment thing and how we're going to do it. And for her, it was really like, oh, I hired the right guy who's really going to take my team to the next level, sort of thing. And that continued on with my boss beyond that. But again, really a lot of that was building that trust there with them that gave me the space to be able to do these things. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I'll let you know about the next event.